Today we're going to make panna cotta, and what it is a gelatin set custard that is not necessarily cooked on the stove, but we're going to infuse the flavors on the stove. And this is just set with the power of gelatin. So the first thing we want to do is take a combination of milk and cream and place it in a pot on the stove, and we're going to infuse our vanilla bean into this. So this is where we want to take the vanilla bean and cut it down lengthwise, open it up, and then take our back of our knife and scrape out the vanilla seeds. We're going to mix this into the sugar in just a minute, so you can save the seeds on your knife and go ahead and infuse the pod directly into the cream milk mixture. This is going to go on the stove just until it starts to kind of come up to a simmer, and then we're going to turn it off, and then you can infuse it for up to 24 hours if you like, to really extract as much flavor as possible. At least an hour though. So I'm going to heat this on the stove and go ahead and do the next step. Because we're not cooking this custard too much, we want to make sure that our vanilla beans get dispersed evenly throughout the mixture. So what we want to do is, before we add our sugar to the cream and milk mixture, we want to add our vanilla beans to the sugar and really mix that in. We're going to do that just with our fingers and incorporate it, and that will actually break up the little pieces of vanilla beans and disperse it way more evenly throughout our milk cream mixture. So really get in there with your fingers and mix it into the sugar. Don't worry about the little fibrous pieces. If you want, you can discard those, but it's just some of the vanilla bean, the pod that we removed when we scraped it, and we're actually going to remove some more of it after it has steeped in the hot liquid for quite a while. So once this is mixed in evenly, then you can go ahead and add your salt and stir that up. We're going to set this aside, and this will be added to our milk cream mixture in just a little bit. After your milk and cream mixture have steeped for as long as you'd like it, you want to heat it back up. And about 15 minutes before you're ready to put this whole thing together, we want to do something called blooming the gelatin. And that means that we're going to take our powdered gelatin here with this is our milk mixture with vanilla extract. That's why it looks a little brown, so I just put it right directly into there. And then what we want to do is go ahead and sprinkle the gelatin right over the top of this evenly. And then if there is a little spot here that isn't mixed in, just go ahead and stir that in. And we need this to sit and bloom or soften for about 15 minutes. So it will get nice and firm. Make sure that it's all mixed in there, that there's no lumps. And then we're just going to set this aside. So we'll come back to this in about 15 minutes, minimum 15 minutes to bloom the gelatin, and then we will reheat our cream milk mixture and incorporate the sugar into that as well. While our gelatin mixture is blooming, we're going to prepare the rest of the mix. So what I'm going to do is remove my vanilla bean from the liquid. And what I want to do here is, just to get the maximum amount of flavor, is take the back of my knife and scrape out any of the residual seeds. So make sure you get the front and the back and retain all of that goodness. So the little bit of pulp in there with the back of my paring knife so that I don't scrape too much off. And then the rest of this I can go ahead and rinse off, dry it, and place that into my sugar to create vanilla sugar. The next step is to add my sugar and vanilla bean and salt mixture to the liquid, and then we're going to stir this in really well and reheat it so that it will melt the gelatin mixture when we're ready. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this in, place it back on the stove, and get it just to a simmer and be ready for our gelatin. So now I have reheated my dairy mixture, and then I have my bloomed gelatin, and you can see that it firms up real nicely. So it's got like this consistency to it. We need to go ahead and make sure this is hot enough to melt this, which simmering temperature is more than sufficient. So what I want to do now is just add this gelatin mixture to the dairy and just gently stir it in. And that is enough residual heat to melt this completely. So once this is melted, I'm going to transfer it to this glass container with a spout. You can transfer it to any container you have that you can use a spout with. And we're going to monitor it and let it cool down before I pour it into my molds. We do want it, it's not going to solidify, but it is going to cool down enough to be able to kind of suspend the vanilla beans slightly more than it would now. And then we're going to prepare our molds so that we can go ahead and pour it into there. So now that my gelatin is melted, I'm going to pour this into this container and make sure you scrape the bottom to get all of the vanilla beans out. And then we'll just monitor this and keep stirring until it is fairly cool. So our panna cotta is cool enough now. It's at room temperature, and I just want to give it a nice stir, and then I'm going to pour it into my molds. So I have some ramekins here, but I also have some little molds that I have. So if you're doing a little mini dessert, these are perfect for that. So what I want to do is just literally pour them in to as much as you'd like to fill it to. And then we're going to let this set in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours. Now you can let this set overnight. The longer you let it set, the firmer it will get. So if you like a little bit softer panna cotta, you can work backwards with your timeline. Go ahead and make it and set it and then serve it so it's a little bit softer. But we're gonna go ahead and let this set until it's firm enough to remove from the mold. You can serve it in the mold, but you can also, I'm gonna unmold these, you can serve it out of the mold. So you can place it on a cookie or a plate, serve it with some fruit, and so we'll do that later on. After your panna cotta has fully set in the refrigerator, it's time to unmold it. And the easiest way to do that is to have a paring knife handy and some really hot water. So I boiled the water and placed it in a bowl, and you want to dip it in very briefly just to help melt a little bit of that gelatin. I also want to help it by taking my paring knife just around the outside edge, just to help release it. You can see that it'll pull away just a little bit from the outside edge, and you know it's ready to unmold. So we want to make sure it's released. You can kind of take it with your fingers a little bit and try and release it off of here. You just need to release that section. You can do this directly onto a plate, or you can place it onto a spatula to transfer it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plate up one of my larger ones. I'm going to place this into my container, making sure I don't get any of the water inside. Now this is ceramic, not metal, so it's going to take a little bit longer to warm up the inside. And I just want to release this, and you can also dip your knife in the hot water in order for it to help melt the outside edge. So once that's released, then we can place this onto a plate. I'm going to dip the bottom one more time to make sure that that gets released from the base. And just to make sure we're good there, we're going to take this and tap it on the outside and just kind of like help it out a little. And the weight of the panna cotta should come right out. Now we're ready to decorate this. And you can just use some fresh fruit if you like. So I have some beautiful kumquats, some blackberries, and some diced strawberries. You can add some cookies to this to get an extra crunch. Streusel would be a perfect combination. And there we have our panna cotta, vanilla bean panna cotta with fresh fruit.